Jacob Fatu just declared war on the entire WWE roster. The Samoan werewolf, the most terrifying member of the bloodline, the man who's been lurking in the shadows waiting for his moment, just obliterated both Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed in a display of violence so brutal that security couldn't stop him. And this wasn't random chaos, this was calculated revenge for what those two monsters did to GUSO and Roman Reigns. But here's what should terrify everyone in WWE: Jacob Fatu didn't just attack them, he destroyed them with such overwhelming force that both men were stretchered out looking like they'd been hit by a truck. If you think this was just another beatdown, if you think WWE has seen this level of dominance before, then you haven't witnessed what Jacob Fatu is truly capable of. Because what happened wasn't wrestling, it was an execution. And every superstar on Raw should be looking over their shoulder wondering if they're next. The night started with Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed celebrating backstage. These two had been on an absolute rampage for weeks. They destroyed Roman Reigns, put GUSO in the hospital, ran through multiple tag teams, and acted like they were untouchable. Bron was cutting a promo about how nobody in WWE could stop them, how the Vision was going to dominate every division, how they were the future. "We ended the Tribal Chief's reign of terror," Bron shouted with that cocky smirk. "We put GUSO where he belongs, in a hospital bed. And there's not a single person in this locker room who can do anything about it. We're unstoppable." Bronson Reed nodded, adding, 330 pounds of destruction plus the genetic freak equals domination. "The bloodline is dead. And we killed it." The lights suddenly went out. Complete darkness. The crowd in the arena started buzzing because they could sense something big was coming. When the lights came back on, there was Jacob Fatu standing in the doorway blocking their exit. The camera caught Bron and Reed's faces, confusion mixed with the first hint of fear. Drop a comment right now. Did you know Jacob Fatu was going to debut this way, or were you completely shocked? Jacob Fatu didn't say a word. He just stared at them with those predator eyes that have made him legendary on the independent scene. 6'1", 270 pounds of pure muscle and violence. Tattoos covering his body telling the story of Samoan warrior heritage. This wasn't just another wrestler, this was a force of nature. Bron Breakker, never one to back down, stepped forward. "Who the hell are you? You got a death wish coming in here," like he didn't even finish the sentence. Jacob Fatu exploded forward with a super kick so fast that Bron didn't see it coming. The impact sounded like a gunshot. Bron crashed backward into equipment cases. Bronson Reed charged at Fatu like a freight train. 330 pounds of momentum. But Jacob Fatu, showing insane agility for his size, sidestepped and used Reed's own momentum against him. Reed crashed through a catering table. Food and drinks went flying everywhere. The backstage area descended into absolute chaos. Bron recovered and speared Fatu into a wall. The impact created a dent in the concrete. These weren't pulled punches, these were two bulls colliding. But Fatu absorbed the spear, grabbed Bron by the throat, and launched him through a nearby door. Bron crashed into the hallway and Fatu followed like a horror movie villain stalking his prey. Security tried to intervene. 5 security guards surrounded Fatu, trying to restrain him. Jacob Fatu threw them off like they were children. One guard got hip-tossed through a production cart. Another ate a spinning back fist that knocked him out cold. Fatu was a one-man wrecking crew, clearing everyone in his path. Bronson Reed recovered and blindsided Fatu with a chair shot to the back. Crack! The sound echoed through the arena. But Fatu barely flinched. He turned around slowly, chair mark on his back, and just smiled at Reed. That psychotic smile that says, "You just made a terrible mistake." Second question for the comments: who do you think is the most dangerous, Jacob Fatu, Bron Breakker, or Bronson Reed? Fatu grabbed the chair from Reed's hands, bent it with his bare hands like it was paper, and threw it aside. Then he grabbed Reed and delivered a devastating Samoan drop that shook the entire floor. Reed was down. But Fatu wasn't finished, not even close. Bron Breakker came charging back with a steel pipe. He swung at Fatu's head, but Jacob ducked and delivered a super kick that sent the pipe flying. Then Fatu had a moonsault, a 270-pound moonsault, onto Bron on the concrete floor. The impact was sickening. Bron's body went completely limp. WWE officials were screaming into their headsets calling for more security, for medical personnel, for anyone who could stop this assault. But Jacob Fatu was possessed. This wasn't about following orders, this was about family. This was about avenging what Bron and Reed did to Roman and G. Fatu pulled Bron up and delivered his signature move, a pop-up Samoan drop that he calls the Samoan werewolf bomb. Bron's body bounced off the concrete. Medical staff rushed in to check on him, but Fatu pushed them aside. He wasn't done sending his message. Bronson Reed tried to crawl away, leaving a trail of destruction behind him, but Fatu stalked him slowly, deliberately, letting Reed feel the terror of being hunted. Reed tried to pull himself up using a production crate, but Fatu grabbed him from behind, lifted all 330 pounds, and hit a German suplex on the concrete. The crowd watching on the arena screens was going insane. Some were chanting "Holy shit!" Others were just stunned into silence at the level of brutality. This wasn't a wrestling match, this was a statement that the bloodline wasn't dead, it had just evolved into something more dangerous. Triple H came running out looking furious. Enough! Fatu, stand down. But Jacob Fatu just looked at Triple H with complete disrespect and delivered one final message: you let them hurt my family. Now they pay the price. His voice was deep, menacing, with that Samoan accent that made every word sound like a threat. Fatu then did something symbolic and terrifying. He grabbed both Bron and Reed, stacked them on top of each other, and hit a massive splash from a production platform onto both bodies, the combined weight of 270 pounds crashing down on two already broken men. It was overkill in the most literal sense. Medical personnel flooded the area. Bron Breakker was bleeding from his mouth, his eyes glazed over, completely unconscious. Bronson Reed wasn't moving at all, his 330-pound frame just limp on the concrete. Stretchers were called immediately. This had gone from an attack to a potential career-ending assault. Third question, predict in the comments, how long will Bron and Reed be out of action after this attack? As Bron and Reed were loaded onto stretchers, Jacob Fatu walked past them and whispered something the cameras barely caught: that's for Roman. That's for G. And that's just the beginning. The implications were chilling. This wasn't the end of Fatu's rampage, it was the start. Security finally got Fatu surrounded, 20 officers forming a wall. But Fatu didn't resist. He'd made his point. He put his hands up and allowed himself to be escorted out, but the damage was done. Two of WWE's most dominant forces were being wheeled out on stretchers. The power dynamic had shifted instantly. Now let's break down what this means for WWE going forward. Jacob Fatu's debut wasn't a standard introduction, it was a declaration. The bloodline isn't rebuilding, it's reloading with the most dangerous weapon they've ever had. Fatu makes Roman look tame. He makes Solo look soft. This is a man who fights with no rules and no mercy. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed had been positioned as unstoppable monsters. They destroyed Roman Reigns. They hospitalized GUSO. They ran through everyone. But Jacob Fatu just proved that they're not unstoppable, they're vulnerable. One man took out both of them simultaneously. That's not just impressive, it's unprecedented. This also sends a message to the Vision. LA Knight, Finn Balor, Logan Paul, GUSO, they all just watched two of their most powerful members get destroyed. How do they respond? Do they unite to take out Fatu? Do they abandon Bron and Reed as damaged goods? The faction's cohesion just got tested. And what about Roman Reigns? The tribal chief has been absent since Bron and Reed's attack. Is Jacob Fatu acting on Roman's orders? Or is Fatu operating independently to protect the family? Either scenario is terrifying because it means the bloodline has a weapon that doesn't need Roman's permission to unleash violence. GUSO's position becomes complicated. G left the bloodline to be independent. He joined the Vision to escape Roman's control. But now his cousin Jacob Fatu just avenged him without being asked. Does G owe Fatu loyalty? Does this pull G back into bloodline politics? The emotional complexity is fascinating. WWE management has a major problem. They can't let Jacob Fatu run wild attacking people without consequences. But they also can't ignore that Fatu was avenging legitimate attacks on his family. Do they suspend him? Fine him? Or do they embrace the chaos and book him as an unstoppable monster? My prediction? WWE gives Fatu a slap on the wrist suspension that lasts 1 week, then brings him back as a special attraction who fights on his own terms. They'll book him like Prime Omega or early Samoa Joe, a destroyer who doesn't need titles or storylines, just victims. The wrestling world is exploding with reactions. Social media is going crazy trying to figure out if this was a work or if Fatu legitimately injured Bron and Reed. The attack looked too real. The stretcher job looked too serious. WWE has blurred the lines between reality and storyline perfectly. And let's talk about Jacob Fatu's presence. He didn't need a 20-minute promo. He didn't need pyro and LED screens. He just showed up and destroyed two men who everyone thought were unstoppable. That's how you make a star. That's how you create an instant credible threat. The comparison to Roman Reigns is inevitable. Roman conquered WWE through psychological warfare, political maneuvering, and calculated violence. Jacob Fatu conquers through pure brutality. He's what Roman would be if he stopped playing mind games and just fought. They're both bloodline, but they represent different philosophies of dominance. This also raises questions about the Anoa'i family structure. Jacob Fatu is Roman's cousin. So is Solo Sikoa. So is GUSO. The family tree is complicated with multiple branches potentially competing for leadership. Is Fatu here to support Roman or replace him? That tension creates incredible storytelling possibilities. Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed's injuries, whether real or kayfabe, need to be serious to justify how dominant Fatu looked. If they return next week without consequences, it undermines Fatu's debut. But if they're out for months, it changes Raw's entire landscape. WWE has to commit to the violence they portrayed. The Vision's response will be crucial. Do they seek revenge on Fatu? Do they try to recruit him? Do they fracture because their supposed unstoppable members got stopped? Every decision has massive implications for Raw's direction, and Roman Reigns' eventual return just became must-see television. When the tribal chief comes back, what's his relationship with Jacob Fatu? Are they allies? Rivals? Does Fatu challenge Roman for bloodline leadership? The possibilities are endless. Share this video because Jacob Fatu's debut is historic. Comment who you think wins in a fight, Jacob Fatu or Roman Reigns. Like if you think Bron and Reed deserve this beating. Subscribe to Wrestling World CC because we're covering every development in this war. Jacob Fatu just announced his arrival by destroying Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. 2 stretcher jobs in 1 attack. The Bloodline has its most dangerous weapon. The Vision just learned they're not invincible. And WWE will never be the same. Jacob Fatu isn't here to compete, he's here to dominate. And every superstar on Raw should be terrified. Because the Samoan werewolf has arrived. And he's hunting.